Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the colony's main tower, watching the sunrise paint the fields of New Haven in golden light. The wheat swayed gently in the morning breeze, stretching as far as the eye could see. 5 years of hard work had turned this empty world into something beautiful, something worth protecting. "Beautiful morning," said Lisa Carter, joining him at the window. The head of colony security carried her usual coffee cup and wore her standard uniform, but Jake could see the satisfaction in her eyes. They had built something special here. "The best kind," Jake replied. "Peaceful." New Haven Colony was home to 50,000 people now. Farmers, scientists, teachers, and families who had come from Earth looking for a new start. The colony grew, food for 3 nearby star systems, and conducted research on the planet's unique plant life. Children played in the streets. Markets buzzed with activity. It was everything a human colony should be. Lisa's communicator buzzed. She frowned as she read the message. Sensor station picked up something unusual at the edge of the system. "Probably just a meteor shower, but I should check it out." Jake nodded. Lisa was always careful about security, even though they had never had any real threats. The nearest alien species were the Zephyrians, and they had never shown interest in this part of space. Most species in the galaxy left humans alone, considering them too young and weak to bother with. An hour later, Lisa burst into Jake's office, without knocking. Her face was pale, and her hands shook as she activated the wall display. "Jake, you need to see this. Now." The screen showed sensor readings from the edge of the system. Dozens of massive objects had appeared from hyperspace. The computer identified them as ships, but they were unlike anything in human records. Long, angular vessels that looked like the shells of giant insects. "How many?" Jake asked. 47 ships. The largest one is 3 kilometers long." Lisa's voice was steady, but Jake could hear the fear underneath. "They're not responding to our communications." Jake felt his stomach drop. New Haven had no military defenses. They had a small, security force with light weapons, but nothing that could stand against a fleet of warships. The nearest human military base was 3 weeks away at maximum speed. "Send a distress signal to Earth Fleet Command," Jake ordered. "Full emergency protocols, and evacuate the outer settlements immediately." Lisa was already moving. "On it. But, Jake, those ships are moving fast. They'll be here in 6 hours." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Emergency sirens wailed across the colony as families gathered their belongings and headed for the evacuation centers. Jake coordinated from the command center while Lisa organized the security teams. Pete Williams, the colony's chief engineer, worked frantically to prepare the underground shelters. The colony had emergency bunkers that could hold 5,000 people, but they had 50,000 colonists. Amy Rodriguez, the head medical officer, set up triage stations and tried to keep everyone calm. "We have transports ready for the children and elderly," Lisa reported, "but there's not enough time to evacuate everyone." Jake watched the tactical display as the alien ships entered the outer system. They moved in perfect formation, like a swarm of deadly insects. "How many can we get to the shelters?" "Maybe 3,000. The bunkers can hold them for weeks if we're careful with supplies." It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But Jake made the decision that would haunt him forever. Save who you can. Focus on the children. The alien ships reached New Haven's orbit just as the sun set. Jake stood in the command center, surrounded by his staff, watching as the enemy fleet took position above their world. The ships were massive, their hulls covered in strange patterns that seemed to shift in the light. Then the communications array crackled to life. The voice that came through was cold and mechanical, speaking broken English. "Human creatures of this world, you have claimed sacred ground. You will be removed." Jake stepped forward. "This is Administrator Morrison of New Haven Colony. We are a peaceful settlement. We have families here, children. We mean no harm to anyone." The response was immediate and without emotion. "Inferior species do not speak to the Zephyrian hegemony. You will be cleansed from sacred soil." The communication ended. Jake stared at the display, trying to process what he had just heard. These aliens saw humans as nothing more than pests to be exterminated. There would be no negotiation, no mercy, no chance for surrender. All remaining civilians to the shelters now, Jake ordered. Security teams prepare defensive positions. We're going to buy as much time as we can. Lisa grabbed his arm. Jake, you should come to the shelters too. The colony needs you alive. Jake shook his head. The colony needs time more than it needs me. Someone has to slow them down. The first orbital bombardment began 20 minutes later. Beams of energy lanced down from the alien ships, turning buildings into vapor and people into memories. Jake watched from the command center as his life's work was destroyed piece by piece. Lisa's security teams fought bravely, but their weapons were useless against the alien technology. The Zephyrians deployed ground forces, insectoid creatures empowered, armor that moved through the streets like deadly machines. They killed everything they found, showing no distinction between soldiers and civilians. As the command center shook from nearby explosions, Jake made his final decision. He sent Lisa and the remaining staff to the shelters, then sealed himself in the engineering section. The colony's fusion reactor could be overloaded, creating an explosion large enough to damage the alien ships in orbit. Jake's hands moved across the control panels, adjusting containment fields and safety systems. Through the speakers, he could hear the sound of alien weapons getting closer. The screams of his people echoed through the corridors. "This is for New Haven," he whispered, and activated the final sequence. The explosion could be seen from space, a miniature sun that burned for 30 seconds before fading to black. When it was over, New Haven Colony was gone and Jake Morrison was dead. But in the deep underground shelters, 3,000 people still lived, hidden from the alien sensors that swept the surface. The Zephyrians had won their first battle against humanity, but they had also made their first mistake. They had left survivors, and survivors could tell stories. Stories that would reach Earth and bring consequences the aliens had never imagined. The darkness was complete. Lisa Carter sat in the main shelter's command room, staring at dead screens and broken equipment. 2 weeks had passed since the world above had turned to ash. 2 weeks of rationing food, treating the wounded, and trying to keep hope alive for 3,000 terrified people. The shelter smelled of recycled air and fear. Children cried in the distance while their parents whispered prayers. The emergency lighting cast strange shadows on the walls, making everything look like a tomb. Sometimes Lisa wondered if that's exactly what this place was. "Lisa, you need to see this." Pete Williams called from across the room. The engineer had been working day and night to repair their damaged systems. His clothes were dirty and his hands were cut from handling broken machinery, but his eyes held something Lisa hadn't seen in days. Hope. She walked over to where Pete sat, surrounded by torn cables and circuit boards. He had managed to connect several damaged computers together, creating something that looked like it might actually work. "I think I can get a signal out," Pete said quietly. "Not much power, and it won't last long, but I can reach the emergency relay network." Lisa felt her heart jump. The relay network was a chain of hidden communication stations that connected all human colonies to Earth. If they could send a message, Fleet Command would know what happened to New Haven. "How long do we have?" Lisa asked. "Maybe 10 minutes. Of transmission time, the power cells are almost dead. 10 minutes to tell Earth about the massacre. 10 minutes to warn them about the Zephyrians." Lisa looked around the shelter at the survivors. Families huddled together, sharing their small portions of food. Amy Rodriguez moved between the wounded, doing what she could with limited medical supplies. These people had lost everything. Their homes, their friends, their entire world. The least Lisa could do was make sure their sacrifice meant something. "Start the transmission," she ordered. Pete's fingers moved across the makeshift controls. Static filled the speakers as the system came online. Slowly, a connection formed with the nearest relay station. The signal was weak and full of interference, but it was working. "This is Lisa Carter, head of security for New Haven Colony," she began. "Emergency transmission to Earth Fleet Command, Priority Alpha." She paused, trying to find the right words. How do you explain the end of a world in just a few minutes? New Haven Colony has been destroyed. 50,000 civilians are dead. We were attacked by an alien force calling themselves the Zephyrian Hegemony. They showed no mercy and accepted no surrender. Lisa continued, describing the attack in detail. The 47 ships that appeared without warning. The cold voice that called humans an inferior species. The systematic extermination of everyone they could find. The aliens use energy weapons and deploy ground forces in powered armor. They appear to be insectoid in nature. Administrator Morrison sacrificed himself to damage several of their ships with our reactor overload. Pete held up 5 fingers. 5 minutes left. Lisa spoke faster, giving technical details about the alien ships and weapons. Pete had managed to scan some of their equipment during the battle, information that might help Earth's military prepare a defense. The Zephyrians left a monitoring station in orbit. They believe all humans on New Haven are dead. 3,000 civilians survive in underground shelters. Food will last 3 more weeks. The signal started to fade. Pete worked frantically to maintain the connection, sweat dripping onto his improvised equipment. Tell our families we tried to fight back, Lisa said. Tell them Jake Morrison died a hero. Tell them the Zephyrians started this war when they murdered our children. Static filled the speakers. The power was almost gone. Earth needs to know, Lisa whispered into the microphone. These aliens think we're weak. They think we're nothing. They're wrong. The transmission died. Pete slumped back in his chair, exhausted. The computers went dark one by one as the last power drained away. Lisa stood in the silence, wondering if anyone had heard their message. Space was vast, and communication relays could fail. Their words might disappear into the void, leaving Earth unaware of the threat heading their way. But she had to believe someone was listening. 6,000 light-years away, Admiral Ryan Brooks sat in his office at Fleet Command Headquarters on Earth. The old soldier had served in 3 wars and commanded ships in battles across the galaxy. He had seen death and destruction that would break lesser men, but the message from New Haven Colony made his hands shake with rage. Brooks played the transmission again, listening to Lisa Carter's voice describe the systematic murder of 50,000 innocent people. The technical data was useful, but it was the human cost that hit him hardest. Families destroyed, children killed, an entire world turned to ash because aliens thought humans were inferior. The Admiral activated his communicator. Get me Fleet Admiral Sullivan and General Cole. Emergency meeting in 30 minutes. Within an hour, the highest military commanders on Earth sat around a conference table, listening to the message from New Haven. Fleet Admiral Kate Sullivan was known for her calm demeanor, but her face was stone as she heard the details of the massacre. General Marcus Cole commanded the Colonial Marines, the elite troops who protected human settlements across the galaxy. He had fought alien pirates and hostile species before, but never anything like this. How many ships can we mobilize? Brooks asked. Sullivan checked her datapad. Every vessel in the Earth Defense Fleet. 200 warships if we strip the home system defenses. Do it, Brooks ordered. I want every ship, every Marine, every weapon we have. These aliens think they can murder our people without consequences. They're about to learn how wrong they are. Cole leaned forward. What are our rules of engagement? Brooks stood up, his eyes cold as space itself. The Zephyrians showed no mercy to defenseless civilians. We'll show them the same courtesy. The meeting continued for hours as Earth's military leaders planned their response. Ship assignments, supply lines, tactical strategies. But underneath all the technical details was something simpler and more dangerous. Humanity was going to war. In the underground shelters of New Haven, Lisa Carter rationed the last of their water and tried to keep hope alive. She didn't know if her message had reached Earth. She didn't know if help was coming, but she had done her duty. The galaxy would learn what happened on New Haven, and if there was any justice in the universe, the Zephyrians would pay for what they had done. The survivors waited in the darkness, counting the days until their supplies ran out. Above them, alien sensors swept the ruins of their world, searching for any sign of human life. Neither side knew that Earth's largest military fleet in history was already gathering at Luna shipyards, preparing for a journey that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The Luna shipyards had never seen anything like it. For 6 weeks, ships had been arriving from every corner of human space. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and support vessels formed long lines in the shadow of Earth's moon. The largest military fleet in human history was taking shape. Admiral Ryan Brooks stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the final ships join the formation. The massive dreadnought was 3 kilometers long and packed with enough firepower to level a small moon. It would serve as the flagship for Operation Righteous Fury. "Final count, Admiral," reported his aide. 200 warships, 50,000 Marines and full support divisions. Every ship in the Earth Defense Fleet except the Home Guard. Brooks nodded. Earth would be protected by only 30 older vessels while the main fleet went to war. It was a risk, but the message from New Haven had changed everything. The Zephyrians had declared war when they murdered defenseless civilians. Now they would face the consequences. Captain Danny Clark walked across the command deck of the heavy cruiser UES Vengeance. His ship was one of the newest in the fleet, equipped with advanced weapon systems and the latest human technology. As leader of the Advanced Scout Squadron, Danny would be among the first to face the enemy. "Lieutenant Parker, what's our status on the alien analysis?" Danny asked. Lieutenant Sam Parker looked up from his tactical display. The young officer had spent weeks studying every piece of data from New Haven Colony. Computer models, battle, recordings and technical scans of Zephyrian equipment covered his screens. "I think we found their weakness, Captain," Sam said excitedly. "Their shields operate on a rotating frequency pattern. If we can time our weapons fire correctly, we can punch right through their defenses." Danny studied the data. The Zephyrians relied on energy shields that shifted their protective frequencies every few seconds. It made them nearly invulnerable to most weapons, but human computers were fast enough to predict the pattern and fire at exactly the right moment. "How confident are you in this analysis?" Danny asked. 90%, sir. We've also developed new ammunition that should be more effective against their armor." The engineering teams worked around the clock to get it ready. In another part of the fleet, Marine Colonel Beth Torres inspected her troops. 500 dropships carried the finest soldiers humanity had ever produced. Powered armor units, orbital assault specialists, and psychological warfare experts who had trained for years to fight alien enemies. "Listen up, Marines," Beth announced over the ship's communication system. "The enemy thinks humans are weak. They think we're prey, animals that will run when faced with superior force. They murdered 50,000 innocent people to prove their point." She paused, letting her words sink in. Every Marine in the fleet had seen the recordings from New Haven. They had watched children die and families torn apart by alien weapons. "We're going to show them what happens when you target defenseless humans. We're going to make them regret every life they took, and when we're done, the galaxy will know that humanity protects its own." The Marines cheered, their voices echoing through the ships. They were ready for war. In the depths of the Retribution, Admiral Brooks met with his most secret weapon. The AI tactical coordinator called Nemesis existed only as lines of code, but it had studied every battle in human history. It knew how humans fought, how aliens thought, and how to turn enemy strengths into weaknesses. "Analysis complete, Admiral," Nemesis reported through the speakers. Its voice was calm and emotionless, like a teacher discussing a math problem. "Zephyrian tactics rely on overwhelming force and intimidation. They expect enemies to surrender when faced with superior numbers." "What do you recommend?" Brooks asked. "Psychological warfare combined with tactical superiority. The Zephyrians have never faced an enemy that refused to be intimidated. Their doctrine has no response to determined resistance." Brooks smiled grimly. Humans had been fighting impossible odds for thousands of years. It was what they did best. The fleet spent 3 more days in final preparations. Engineers installed the new weapons that could penetrate Zephyrian shields. Marines practiced boarding actions using mock-ups of alien ship layouts. Pilots rehearsed attack patterns that would let them strike fast and disappear before the enemy could respond. Captain Clark's reconnaissance teams prepared special stealth, technology developed from wreckage recovered at New Haven. The alien ships wouldn't see them coming until it was too late. Dr. Helen Gray, the fleet's chief scientist, worked with teams of researchers to understand Zephyrian psychology. The enemy had called humans an inferior species, but their behavior suggested deep-seated fears about human unpredictability. "They're afraid of us," she explained to Admiral Brooks. "Not physically, but psychologically. Humans don't follow their rules. We don't surrender when we should. We don't die quietly like other species they've conquered." "How do we use that?" Brooks asked. "Make them more afraid. Show them that humans are not prey animals. Show them that we're predators." The final ships arrived from the outer colonies, carrying volunteers who had left their homes to join the war effort. Merchants, farmers, and scientists who had never held weapons before now served as support crew on military vessels. The massacre at New Haven had united humanity like nothing before. Admiral Brooks called a meeting of all ship captains. 200 commanders gathered in the Retribution's main hangar, representing the finest officers in the human fleet. The room was silent as Brooks began to speak. 6 weeks ago, the Zephyrian hegemony murdered 50,000 innocent people on New Haven colony. Men, women, and children who had never harmed anyone. They died because aliens believed humans were too weak to fight back. Brooks paused, looking at each captain in turn. "Today we prove them wrong. We're not going to New Haven to negotiate or make peace. We're going there to deliver justice. Complete and final justice." The captains nodded. They understood their mission. The Zephyrians wanted to teach the galaxy that humans are weak. Brooks continued. "Instead, they're about to learn what happens when you target our families. They're about to discover that humanity never forgets, and we never forgive those who hurt the innocent." The fleet departed Luna shipyards 12 hours later. 200 ships formed a perfect formation as they engaged their hyperspace drives. The journey to New Haven would take 2 weeks, giving them time for final preparations and battle planning. In the underground shelters of New Haven, Lisa Carter counted their remaining supplies. Food for maybe 5 more days, water for 3. The survivors were growing weak, but they held on to hope that somehow, somewhere, help was coming. Above them, the Zephyrian monitoring station continued its silent watch, confident that no human presence remained on the dead world. The alien crew had no idea that the largest revenge fleet in galactic history was racing toward them through hyperspace. The war for humanity's future had begun. The Zephyrian monitoring station orbited New Haven like a metal spider, its sensors sweeping the dead world below. Commander Vexka felt satisfied as he watched the readings. 2 months had passed since the cleansing, and no human life remained on the planet. The inferior species had been properly eliminated. "All sensors show negative for biological activity," reported his subordinate. "The world is dead as ordered." Vexka clicked his mandibles in approval. This had been an easy victory. Humans were weak creatures who died quickly when faced with superior Zephyrian technology. The hegemony would be pleased with their efficiency. The first sign of trouble was a brief energy spike on the outer sensors. Vexka frowned at the reading. It looked like ships dropping out of hyperspace, but that was impossible. No human vessels remained in this sector of space. "Sensor contact," his operator announced, voice rising with alarm. "Multiple ships approaching at high speed." Vexka stared at the tactical display as red dots appeared around his station. Not just a few ships, but dozens, then hundreds. The human fleet materialized out of hyperspace like ghosts becoming solid, their stealth technology hiding them until the last possible moment. "Impossible," Vexka whispered. "The humans have no fleet this large." On the bridge of the UES Retribution, Admiral Brooks watched the enemy station appear on his screens. 2 months of planning had led to this moment. The human fleet had traveled in complete radio silence, using new stealth systems to remain hidden until they reached New Haven. "All ships report ready for action," his communications officer announced. Brooks stood up from his command chair. Around him, the bridge crew prepared for battle with the calm efficiency of trained professionals. These were Earth's finest officers, and they knew exactly what they were here to do. "This is Admiral Brooks to all ships," he announced over the fleet communications. 2 months ago, the Zephyrians murdered 50,000 innocent people on the world below us. Today we begin to collect payment for that debt. He paused, looking at the tactical display showing the alien monitoring station. No quarter asked. None given. Fire at will. The human fleet opened fire as one. 200 ships unleashed their weapons in a coordinated strike that lit up space like a new star. Missiles, energy beams, and projectile weapons converged on the Zephyrian station from every direction. The aliens managed to raise their shields just before the first weapons hit. For a moment, it seemed like their defenses would hold. Then Lieutenant Sam Parker's calculations proved correct. The human weapons fired in perfect timing with the shield frequency changes, punching through the defensive barriers like they weren't there. The monitoring station exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from the planet's surface. Vexica and his crew died without understanding what had killed them. Their final transmission was a single word of shock sent toward the Zephyrian fleet base. In the underground shelters of New Haven, Lisa Carter felt the ground shake from the explosion above. Emergency power flickered back on as the alien jamming field disappeared. For the first time in 2 months, their communication systems came alive. "This is Admiral Brooks of the Earth Defense Fleet," a voice announced over the speakers. "New Haven survivors, please respond. We're here to take you home." Lisa felt tears streaming down her face as she grabbed the microphone. Around her, the surviving colonists began to cheer and cry at the same time. They had been saved. "Admiral Brooks, this is Lisa Carter. We have 800 survivors in the underground shelters. We knew you would come. Hold tight, Lisa. We're sending Marines down to secure the area. You're safe now." Colonel Beth Torres led the first dropships to the planet's surface. Her Marines landed in the ruins of New Haven Colony, their powered armor gleaming in the alien sun. The devastation was complete. Where once a thriving city had stood, only melted metal and glass remained. "Secure the shelter entrances," Beth ordered. "Medical teams, prepare for civilian evacuation." As her troops moved through the ruins, they found evidence of the massacre everywhere: burned homes, destroyed schools, and makeshift graves where the survivors had buried their dead. Each Marine who saw the destruction felt their anger grow stronger. When the shelter doors finally opened, Beth Torres watched 800 humans emerge from the underground darkness. They were thin and weak from months of rationing, but they were alive. Children ran to their parents. Families embraced. Medical teams began treating the wounded and sick. Lisa Carter walked up to Colonel Torres, her security uniform dirty, but her eyes still strong. She had kept these people alive through impossible circumstances. "Thank you for coming," Lisa said, simply. "Thank Earth," Beth replied. "We don't abandon our own." As the evacuation continued, Admiral Brooks received new intelligence from his scouts. Captain Danny Clark's reconnaissance ships had located the main Zephyrian fleet base in the Kepler 442 system, only 3 days away at maximum speed. "How many ships?" Brooks asked. 67 combat vessels," Danny reported. "They're gathered around a fortified space station. Intelligence suggests this is their forward operating base for attacks on human colonies." Brooks studied the tactical data. The Zephyrian force was smaller than his fleet, but they would be fighting from prepared positions. It would be a real battle, not the quick strike they had just completed. "Set course for Kepler 442, Brooks ordered. "It's time to finish this." As the human fleet prepared to depart, the survivors from New Haven were loaded onto hospital ships for the journey back to Earth. Lisa Carter chose to remain with the fleet, volunteering to serve as an intelligence officer. She had seen what the Zephyrians could do, and she wanted to make sure they never did it again. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving New Haven's orbit empty except for the wreckage of the alien monitoring station. The first battle had been won, but the war was just beginning. In the Kepler 442 system, War Prime Kextar received the news of the monitoring station's destruction with growing alarm. The report made no sense. Humans were supposed to be weak, primitive creatures without the technology or courage to challenge the hegemony. "How many ships attacked the station?" he demanded. "Reports indicate over 200 vessels," his aide replied nervously. Kextar's compound eyes narrowed. 200 ships was impossible. The humans had no such fleet. But the monitoring station was gone, and his sensors showed unknown vessels approaching his position. "Prepare all defenses," he ordered. "If the humans want to die gloriously, we will accommodate them." But deep in his thorax, Kextar felt something he had never experienced before when facing human opponents. For the first time in his career, the war prime of the Zephyrian hegemony felt uncertain about the outcome of a battle. The human fleet was coming, and they brought with them the fury of a species that would not forgive the murder of innocent families. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their numbers. It was their refusal to let evil go unpunished. War Prime Kextar stood in the command center of his flagship, watching the human fleet emerge from hyperspace. The sight before him defied everything he knew about the inferior mammalian species. 200 ships arranged in perfect battle formation, their weapons already charging for combat. "Impossible," he clicked in his native language. "Humans do not possess such military capability." His tactical officer, a younger Zephyrian named Tekvar, studied the sensor readings with growing alarm. "War Prime, their ships are using technology we have never seen before. Our sensors cannot properly identify their weapon systems." Kextar felt his confidence wavering. The hegemony had conquered dozens of species across the galaxy. None had ever assembled a fleet this large or advanced. Humans were supposed to be weak, primitive creatures who scattered when faced with superior force. "Open communications with the lead vessel," Kextar ordered. "We will demand their surrender." On the bridge of the UES Retribution, Admiral Brooks received the incoming transmission. The alien's voice was harsh and mechanical, speaking broken English with obvious arrogance. "Human fleet, you have entered Zephyrian space without permission. Surrender immediately or face destruction." Brooks looked around his bridge at the officers who had traveled thousands of light years for this moment. Every person in the fleet had seen the recordings from New Haven. They had watched children die and families destroyed by these same aliens. "This is Admiral Brooks of the Earth Defense Fleet," he replied calmly. "You are the ones who will surrender. You murdered 50,000 innocent people on New Haven Colony. Today you answer for those crimes." Kextar's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "The cleansing of inferior species is not a crime. It is necessity. Your weak species will submit or be eliminated." "Wrong answer," Brooks said quietly. The human fleet attacked without warning. Captain Danny Clark's scout squadron used micro-jump technology to appear inside the Zephyrian formation, their ships materializing among the enemy vessels like deadly ghosts. The aliens had never seen such tactics before. Lieutenant Sam Parker's weapon modifications proved devastatingly effective. Human missiles and energy beams cut through Zephyrian shields like they were made of paper. The aliens' defensive frequencies, which had protected them against every other species, were useless against Earth's technology. "Impossible," Kextar shrieked as his ships began exploding around him. "How do they penetrate our defenses?" The battle became a masterclass in human warfare. While Zephyrian doctrine relied on overwhelming force and rigid formations, human tactics emphasized speed, adaptability, and creative thinking. Earth ships moved in unpredictable patterns, striking hard and fast before disappearing into new positions. Colonel Beth Torres led boarding parties against crippled Zephyrian vessels. Her Marines used powered armor and advanced weapons to fight through alien corridors, capturing enemy ships intact. The Zephyrians had never faced enemies who would board their vessels during combat. "Secure the bridge," Beth ordered as her troops advanced through a damaged alien cruiser. "We need prisoners for intelligence gathering." The psychological warfare aspect proved just as effective as the physical battle. Every human ship broadcast the names and faces of New Haven's victims as they fought. The aliens heard the voices of murdered children and saw images of destroyed families with each weapon fired. "This is for Sarah Martinez, age 7, announced the captain of the UES Thunder as his ship destroyed a Zephyrian destroyer. "This is for the Wong family. This is for everyone you killed." The Zephyrians had never fought an enemy that made warfare personal. They were used to clinical, efficient battles against species that surrendered quickly. Humans fought with emotion, with anger, with a desire for justice that made them unpredictable and dangerous. Kextar watched his fleet being systematically destroyed and felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. Real. Paralyzing. Terror as he realized that the hegemony had made a terrible mistake. "War Prime, we must retreat," Tekvar urged. "We have lost 60% of our ships." "No," Kextar snarled. "The hegemony does not retreat from inferior species." But even as he spoke, human marines were cutting through his flagship's hull. Colonel Torres personally led the assault on the command center, her troops moving with practiced efficiency through alien corridors. The blast doors to the bridge exploded inward. Beth Torres stepped through the smoke, her powered armor scorched, from battle but still functioning. Behind her came a squad of Earth's finest soldiers, their weapons trained on the surviving aliens. Kextar raised his secondary arms in what might have been surrender, his compound eyes wide with shock. The war prime of the Zephyrian hegemony had been defeated by the species he considered weakest in the galaxy. "I am Colonel Torres of the Colonial Marines," Beth announced. "You are under arrest for crimes against humanity." The formal surrender took place 3 days later on the surface of New Haven Colony. Admiral Brooks chose the location deliberately, standing among the graves of the murdered colonists. Kextar was brought forward in restraints, his proud bearing broken by defeat. Lisa Carter stood beside Admiral Brooks, representing the survivors who had witnessed the massacre. She had insisted on being present for this moment, to see justice finally served. "War Prime Kextar of the Zephyrian hegemony," Brooks began formally. "You stand accused of genocide, war crimes, and the murder of 50,000 innocent civilians. How do you answer these charges?" Kextar looked around at the human soldiers surrounding him, then at the memorial stones marking the graves of his victims. His voice was barely a whisper. "I thought you were weak." "We are not weak," Brooks replied. "We are just, but justice and mercy are not the same thing." The terms of surrender were simple and non-negotiable. The Zephyrian hegemony would withdraw from all human space immediately. They would pay massive reparations to the families of New Haven's victims. Most importantly, they would submit to human oversight of their military activities to ensure no other species suffered the same fate. "Your hegemony will learn to coexist peacefully with other species," Brooks continued, "or it will cease to exist. The choice is yours." As Kextar was led away to face trial on Earth, construction began on a new settlement at New Haven. This time, it would be protected by a permanent human fleet garrison. The ruins of the old colony became a memorial park where visitors could remember those who died and understand the price of peace. Lisa Carter became the new colonial governor, overseeing the reconstruction with help from Earth's government. The survivors who chose to stay helped build something stronger than what had been destroyed. They created a symbol of human resilience. 6 months later, Admiral Brooks stood on the observation deck of a new space station orbiting New Haven. The planet below was green again, with new cities rising from the ashes of the old. Human ships patrolled the system, ensuring that the tragedy would never be repeated. "Admiral," his aide reported, "we have a message from the outer colonies. 3 more species have requested defensive treaties with Earth." Brooks nodded. Word of the Zephyrian defeat had spread quickly across the galaxy. Other species now understood that humanity would protect the innocent and punish those who targeted the defenseless. The human fleet had grown stronger after the war. New ships, better weapons, and most importantly, a clear mission. Earth's military would serve as protectors for any species threatened by those who believed might made right. In the memorial garden below, children played among the flowering trees planted in memory of New Haven's victims. Their laughter carried on the wind, a sound that would have made Jake Morrison smile. He had died to save lives, and his sacrifice had led to something greater than anyone could have imagined. Humanity had announced its presence among the stars, not as conquerors, but as guardians. They had shown the galaxy that some lines should never be crossed and that those who harmed the innocent would face consequences beyond their worst nightmares. The war was over. Justice had been served, and the universe was a little bit safer for everyone.